Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another video, and as you can tell on the webcam for a long form discussion once again with a fellow Chelsea creator. I don't know if I should introduce this guy because I'm sure literally all of you will know who this is, but he's got over 80k subs on YouTube now, one of the biggest names in the Chelsea online community. It's great to have him on to talk about Chelsea and have a debate. Thanks for coming on, NiiNii. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Just I'm trying to, invest my time wisely during these like self-isolation times. So yeah, I'm just, working on things in my life, trying to like maybe falling back in love with YouTube is a bit strong, but yeah, I'm just trying to do a lot of extracurricular activity things just to get that spark going again.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I think I know over the past couple of days you've been working on your N'Golo Kante video, which you said was like one of your biggest videos that you've done in terms of effort. I mean, in terms of, I guess something that as creators we know, but as like an audience don't know, like the amount of effort that goes into these videos, it can be quite taxing sometimes, and I'm sure this one has been for you, this Kante video as well.
Yeah, it's taking me like 2 full days. Like even the thumbnail alone took me like 3 hours to make, just going through different ideas and then optimizing it, and the scripts, editing, recording, it all adds up. So hopefully people enjoy the video and the efforts.
Yeah, definitely go and check out NiiNii's video on Kante because it's an interesting debate. I've made a couple of videos on it. But let's talk about, of course, we know the Premier League season. We don't know what's going to happen with the Premier League. I don't really want to rehash that debate as we were saying before we came on air and started recording. Instead, I want to talk about the contract situation with Chelsea because there's quite a few players that are going to be, whose contracts are going to be expiring at the end of what is it, June the 30th, I believe, is the date, and that's the date where the Premier League hope will be concluded. So we've got Willian, Pedro, Willy Caballero, and Olivier Giroud. Out of those players, who do you think should stay? Who do you think should go? Is there any you're sort of torn on, or are you pretty set now of who you feel should be going and who should be staying?
I'm pretty set, but when it comes to just two players in Caballero and Giroud, I would keep them if we weren't able to get, other options. So let's say the second keeper wasn't able to sign. Let's say we struggled in, it was a valiant effort to get another striker, but we weren't able to sign him. Then I'd look at Giroud and Caballero because I thought that they've been pretty decent with their cameos this season. But I think for other players such as your Pedros and your Williams, guys on like big contracts, I think, their time is like basically up right now. And even though Williams been great this season, personally, I think it's one of his best footballing seasons. I think that if we can sign someone younger now and build for the future, because it's about building for a new generation, I think it'd be worth the sacrifice.
I definitely agree. I think with Giroud, I feel he should be kept. And I think there's not been a lot of talk about Michy leaving, but I feel this is the summer for Michy to leave, or at least, loan for a permanent move. And I think if you're going to keep one of those strikers, I think Giroud is definitely the one because he gives you, as we've seen this season, especially with Tammy still learning and growing, gives you that sort of great option of experience. And with Euro 2020 being postponed to 2021, there's still going to be that motivation probably for Giroud to get into that squad with Caballero. And I agree with you with Willian and Pedro. In terms of replacements, what are you sort of thinking? Of course, we can talk about Sancho, but is there any sort of left field suggestions that you think would be good acquisitions for Chelsea this summer?
One player that I've always been a big fan of is Tagliafico from Ajax. I think that even though Telles is a great option, and even though, let's be serious, like in the market right now, there's tons of great left back options like available. So I think whoever, if we didn't sign him, I'd still be happy with whoever we sign because they're going to suit how we play. But I just think with Tagliafico, with the, his price tag and the way he plays and how similar Ajax play to us. He's been an amazing player for them. He's been like a key component for their team as well. And I think that he could easily translate his performance levels with us if we signed him, And I think, if you got like a Ziyech, if you're signing one of his teammates as well, he speaks English too. Good price, rumors that he's around 25 million. I think it would be great business.
I think definitely for me, left back, and I think you probably share this, is probably the most important position this summer.
Yeah.
It's the one position when people were talking about central midfielders and even I think centre backs in some way. I'm like left back for me has to. If you would say to me, the most amount of money you can spend, or you can only sign one player. I'm signing a left back. Like, and my preference is Grimaldo because I think I favour him. Unfortunately, I think for both of our sort of preferred options, there haven't been a lot of talk about it, have there? Strong links. It's mostly been Chilwell or Telles. Out of those two, who would you prefer?
Oh, I'd probably go for Telles. I just think Chilwell is too much money, and I just think if you're going to spend nearly 70 million on a player that isn't yet the finished article, I don't know. I think money needs to reflect like the quality of a player at times. Like if I'm signing you for 70 million, then I'm expecting like guarantees. And I think with Chilwell right now, I don't think you get those guarantees yet.
Yeah, I think that with Chilwell, there's that premium you get on an English player, and we know Leicester are going to be hard negotiators. Look at what they did with Harry Maguire last summer. They didn't let him go till it was 80 million. They didn't. Man United didn't get him till, but I don't even think they got him for maybe a little bit of pre-season. So and Tellers as well. A point has been made out. I think it was by Liam Toomey or Simon Johnson in an article a few months back, talking about some of Chelsea's best recent deals have been pouncing on release clauses. You look at N'Golo Kante, Diego Costa, both of those players, I think, and I look at the price tag of Telles compared to Chilwell, and I think that's a price that Chelsea like going for, and it could be a successful one. So I would say Telles more. I think Chilwell, for the fact he's used to the Premier League, is a good option, but it could be productivity wise, Telles could be a better option.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ben's got decent attributes, but one thing I always look for is how well do you perform in the big games? Because I think that normally gives you a sign if the player has like the right mentality, if he's like confident enough to express himself in the biggest games and actually do something as well, then that tells if they're like ready for the next level. So for me, Ben, Maddison as well, guys like that, spend your time at Leicester City. There's no rush, learn the game when you're like 25, then reevaluate what you're going to do next.
I think both of those players there, and I think like a lot of that Leicester team, just taking off my sort of Chelsea hat, I think it'd be really intriguing to see how that project develops over the number of years. If they get Champions League football, how Brendan Rodgers can deal with that, because I think a big test for Brendan Rodgers is doing well in Europe with an English team. He didn't remember what happened with Liverpool. They got into Europe and it sort of all came apart, and I think that's going to be a big test for him if they have Champions League football to contend with. They've had that sort of free season this year, and he's been able obviously to work on a training ground a lot with that team, and I do enjoy a lot of those players. I think the system he's got there is really intriguing, and I think it's a good story for Brendan Rodgers to come back to Premier League football and do well.
There was a lot of talk. Yeah, there was like a lot of talk before of before guys like Sarri came and Lampard came, when it came to like the manager speculation about who could potentially lead us. I think like me and a few of us spoke about someone like a Brendan Rodgers before when he was still at Celtic, because he knew the club, he's got a great philosophy on the game, and no surprise that he's doing really well at Leicester City. So it's good for Brendan, and I like how Leicester play. I think that they're a good team. But again, I'm not really looking at the squad and I'm thinking, is there any player I'd sign from them to help our team or upgrade us? Like, what do you think about Ndidi? People have spoken about him a lot, but what's your opinions?
I think with Ndidi, it's a bit like, it's an easy comparison to make, but it instantly my mind goes, N'Golo Kante. We've got a better version there. I know the fitness issues, but like N'Golo Kante is the best defensive midfielder in the world on his best day. He, for me, being biased, he's the best midfielder in the world on his day. In terms of what he can do on a football pitch, no one can match him. And I just sort of think we really don't know. I was saying this in a video yesterday. We really don't know what Lampard wants his midfield to be yet, sort of concretely, do we? We don't know if it's going to be more of a functional midfield, a more creative midfield, a midfield that's filled with goals. I wouldn't be too shocked if Lampard goes down that route. I don't know. I don't think that's a player to me that number one, we don't need a midfielder for me, other than maybe Coutinho, but still, I think that is one area that does not need strengthening. And number two, does he improve on any of the midfielders we have? If you to match him up with anyone else, yes, I know there's concerns over maybe us being a little bit lightweight or overrunning midfield at times, but still, I don't think he's a player that I'm like, we have to go out and get him. There's nothing against him. I think he works. He's one of those players that works really well in the system he's put in, and maybe in a different era and a different time, he may have been a player that could have come to Chelsea.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I think for me, he's like an upgraded version of like a Bakayoko. You know, for me, it's just more like a defensive mids. You know, like Leicester City, they've got two creators in front of him to make up for his lack of like incision with his passing. You know, he's not someone that's going to play passes between the lines and move the ball really quickly. And I think at times he gets, you know, you can press him onto his weaker foot and you can win the ball. Like we saw that with Mason Mount at the start of the season, and I've still seen Ndidi make that mistake in games as well. So I don't know. I just think for us, we clearly want someone at the base that's going to help our play, transition out from the back. So yeah, as you said, man, we've got N'Golo Kante, who's like the world-class version. So when you have that, you don't have to do anything else really.
Yeah, and I still think that in terms of the modern game and what that position I think in the Premier League is going to be in the coming years, I think we've seen, you know, Jorginho come in, we've seen Rodri come in. I get the sense, a bit like I was reading a book by, I've forgotten the writer's name now, Michael Cox. It was called The Mixer, and it's about sort of all the Premier League years and formations and tactics, and how number 10s when they originally came in the Premier League weren't sort of well thought of. They struggled, and I get the sense, I don't know if you agree, the regista position will be one that in a number of years will be seen as normal in the Premier League. It will be seen that type of midfielder at the base of midfield rather than a sort of a functional central midfielder will be a more creative playmaker. Do you think in the coming years that will be sort of more, we'll see that more and more often?
Yeah, I think so, because like for me, you know, players, the role of a player is supposed to like complement other players in the team. And I think with registas, they're great for mids that like to make runs from deep, you know, runs inside the box. You know, let's say, you know, it comes to counter-attack opportunities. Yeah, I think, for example, with Jorginho, he's really at his element when, you know, teams are closing us down our own half, and he just plays just a smart 5-yard pass that takes out two players, and then it finds an option free, and then the counter-attack starts. So I think, you know, as time goes on, I think that role will be appreciated. But I mean, if you're asking me, you know, the original regista in the Premier League was Mikel. You know, that season when Ancelotti was our manager, you know, he was amazing and he played nearly every single game, and he allowed Lampard to be even better. He didn't really get any praise. People didn't like the fact that he didn't really do anything. And I think maybe in the Premier League, I don't know, I think maybe we don't appreciate like the nuances in football because, you know, we just like we want to see like a lot of action, a lot of tackles, a lot of passion. Yeah, that's what football means for a lot of people here. So it means that sometimes football can't be more than that. And when players are doing, you know, when they're adding their own unique style to the game, and coaches are trying to advance the game tactically as well, I think there's a reason why we're always so far behind. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if fans really, you know, start to appreciate the different roles and releases like that.
I think it's perception over reality. I think we've seen that with Jorginho, and my hope is that this season has maybe changed a lot of people's opinions. I think it's been a positive for Jorginho, because I thought at periods last season, I just got the sense with everything that went on with Sarri, I thought Jorginho's not going to recover here. I think even if it wasn't particularly his fault, I just got the sense he's going to have this sort of curse over him the whole time he's at Chelsea. And no matter what he does, there's always going to be this perception of him on a football pitch. And I think it is. I think it's about digging a little bit deeper. And when we watch football, and it's not, you know, it's not that your old-fashioned defensive midfielder doesn't have any purpose anymore. It's about the style of football you're playing. You know, if you want to play a possession style of football, you need a player like Jorginho. If you want to play a more functional style of, look at Liverpool, their midfield is not the most flair-filled, you know, creative. They don't have a regista, but why the way Jurgen Klopp has set up that team, it's to help out that front three. You know, it's not. I think sometimes people get annoyed that like, oh, there's this obsession with registas and obsession with possession. It's not. It's like, look at what's being successful at the top of the English game at the moment. You need to be a more progressive side, and if Jorginho helps us be a more progressive side, then happy days. Talking about Chelsea right now and talking about what's happened, just sort of your reflections on the season as we got up, well, the season where we got up to basically, in terms of Frank Lampard and what he was doing. Because I know even though we've had frustrating results, I see you talk a lot about how we're moving in a right direction with the way we're playing. Yeah,
you know, I think we've lived up to my expectations this season. Before the season started, I said we'd be top four, like guaranteed top four, because one, I knew how good these young guys were. Two, I knew what type of football Lampard was going to bring. And I just felt that when I looked at the other rivals, they were in a much weaker position. I looked at Arsenal, and I know when they signed Pepe, people were like, "Oh wow, what are Arsenal going to do?" But at the time, I was thinking, okay, you've got Aubameyang, you've got Lacazette, and now you've got Pepe. How the hell are you going to make that into a team? What's Paul Torreira like? What is Torreira going to do in that midfield, having to cover so much distance and grounds? I didn't see the synergy at all, and their seasons reflected that. They're actually doing worse than I predicted. So I think that we're definitely on the right trajectory. I think we'd have been a lot better if it wasn't for injuries to this season, and that's what's really impressed me, is how Lampard has dealt with that adversity. He's used different formations when we need to. He's found unique ways to use the players and the team. We're still able to compete. We haven't had that one game yet where I felt like we were absolutely shambolic. There was no spirit, there was no heart desire, which is a great testament to Lampard's coaching, and what that mentality is going to instill in the team. So I've just seen so many positives, and I just know that once Lampard can replace some of the I don't want to say fodder because it's too disrespectful, but some of the older players that maybe suited other managers, once he's able to fully get the team he wants, well, we've seen what's happened to Klopp, what's happened with Pep, with Pochettino as well. So I think that once those players come in, then we're really going to go to a different level. And I think a lot of the players we're seeing now are going to look even better for next season.
I absolutely agree with, I think, everything you said there. I think the sense and the restrictions on Lampard, I think you have to always, it's can be seen as an excuse, but it is. I think you have to talk about the transfer ban. You have to talk about the injuries. You have to talk about his inexperience as a manager. You have to talk about the fact he's getting Mason Mount playing 42 games in his first season at Chelsea at his age. These are all things and elements that I think a lot of us, before a ball was kicked, made us think, oh, this could be quite a difficult season. We were all behind it, and there were fears. I think there were fears during that first game, and there was like a bit of a deep breath after that first game, because we were like, but once you started that Super Cup game in particular against Liverpool, I think made us all sort of ears prick up and think, hang on a minute, there could be something here. We're not. I think all of us out of that game, even though it was of course a defeat, came out of it and went, this team is going to it's going to compete. It's going to be fine this season. And although it took a little bit to get going, I think we got there. What were your impressions during that really good winning run in the season? That sort of 6-7 game winning run in the league,
like 6-7
where everything
games
was flowing. Pulisic came in the team, Jorginho and Cover's partnership. All of that. How do you think that worked out? And do you think that's going to be? Sorry to sort of heap on questions, but do you think that will be a trend for what we see and a signal for what we're going to see next season?
I hope so. During that run of games, my first thought is okay, these guys are good enough to easily beat teams in the bottom 10, which is what I wanted to see. So, we were able to find our style and get goals. I definitely think we profited from a lot of naivety from other teams, because I think at the time they felt that because we had a lot of younger players, transfer ban, all the nonsense from the media, maybe they believed that they had an advantage against us. So we were playing against a lot of teams that were really open, giving us a lot of space, and we just completely destroyed them. And I think very quickly teams realized, hang on a second, this team is a lot better than we originally thought. And we have to really close the spaces and we have to make it hard for them to beat us. And I think that's a great sign to see from such a young team, with so many guys who are just like 19, 20, playing their first season at this level as well. So, it definitely made me feel confident, but at the same time, I wasn't too carried away knowing that, the real test is going to come when teams start to park the bus, defend deep, etc., etc. But I think even when it came down to that, once that period was over and teams started to really just defend a lot, we didn't really see the team at its full potential due to so many injuries at the time. If let's say we could rely upon a HUDSON-ODOI and Pulisic and Co, and let's say Ruben, let's say that friendly last year didn't happen and he was with us the entire season. They're exponentially improving things, because they're going to be adding more goals and assists to our games. So, this is why I'm saying for next season, once some of those cylinders are back firing, we're going to see even more improvements and even more dominant style against those types of teams. But yeah, I think there was lots of pros and a few cons this season. But I think if your mentality is to think of the long term, if you're thinking about how the team's going to progress as the years go on, and once we get to the third season and fourth season, when you're expecting results, more the progress, then I think that's when you can really be really critical about how the team plays, who's performing well, etc., etc.
Yeah, the XG, and I know a lot of people demean XG as like this thing like that people just bring up, and it's used as an excuse sometimes. And I think, but it is important when you do look at those stats of expected goals from Chelsea. Chelsea are a team that create a lot of chances, and when we're being up there with Liverpool and Man City, I think what it tells you is if we become a more prolific team in front of goal next season, Chelsea are going to score more goals. It's about adding that, not only creativity against the low blocks, but also the clinical nature, which we could see from a new striker. We could see, Ziyech could add goals as well, not just creativity. You talked about the young players there. Rather than just talking about who's player of the season, because I think a lot of us will sort of, there's a consensus on, I think, who's player of the season, but young player of the season, because I saw an article in The Athletic today about who's young player of the season. Who would be your Chelsea young player of the season?
I mean, it's really hard. I think Mason deserves a lot of credit because maybe he played more games than he expected, but he's shown that he has the mental fortitude to play at this level. He can handle the pressure, which is a great sign for someone this young. And as the season's gone on, when Lampard hasn't restricted him to, that role he was playing for most of the season, you started to see more creativity, more runs with the ball, more influence in games. And then we saw games against, Liverpool, Tottenham, etc., etc. But I probably wouldn't say him. It would be between maybe Tammy Abraham and Reece James. But I think maybe I'd say Tammy Abraham. I think my favorite moment from Tammy this season was that game against Ajax, because, the game at home, right at the start, we can see from a set piece, and it was Tammy's fault. And it wasn't the first time that he's lost his man or hasn't been dominant near the posts, and it's cost us a lot. And it felt like at that moment, it just clicked into Tammy's head that this will never, ever happen again. And since that period on, he's been one of our best defenders at marking the posts and helping us out from set pieces. And it really just showed me, wow, that improvement that quickly, I thought he's led the line really well. I thought that, comparing his performances compared to other strikers that have played for us over the years, I think, just performance-wise, Tammy has just been on another level to your Moratas and your Torres. He used to hide inside the books. That, Morata that used to constantly fall down anytime he was holding the ball up. Torres that was 50-50 with his passing. Most times passing it back to the opposition. Tammy's shown that he has all the foundations in place. So all you can do is just improve and be more efficient. And you look at the stats, the XG and everything like that. He's showing that, he completely suits how we play. To get 18 goals this season, without those injuries, without playing through injuries for that month, I think he would have easily beaten 20 goals plus. So I think if that happens and he wasn't unfortunate like that, then I think the discourse around Tammy would be completely different, because I feel like a lot of people are still seeing him as this championship striker and that's all he's ever going to be. And it's kind of funny because this was literally the same thing that happened to Harry Kane when he first broke through, when he first got 30 goals to all comps. I remember speaking to my friend who's a massive Spurs fan, and I was like, wow, this Harry Kane guy that's watching him play for you guys, I really think that you guys have the real deal here. And at the time, he was like, nah, he still can't do this, he still can't do that. But I'm like, hold on a second. You're seeing what he's doing at this age. Aren't you thinking that next year after that, he's going to get better, he's going to improve? And it's like people couldn't really see the vision. And what's happened to Harry Kane? One of the best strikers in the world now. So I get that same feeling from Tammy Abraham. And I think that with Tammy, he'll be someone that's going to constantly, be willing to fight for his position if we do sign reinforcement in that area. And I think he's probably going to win it, to be honest. So I think I'd have Tammy Abraham as my young player of the year.
I firmly agree. Tammy is my pick. I think scoring goals in the Premier League. Not only that, it's being given the number 9 shirt at Chelsea, which it's a quite silly thing, but calling it the curse of the number 9 shirt at Chelsea. But that's big pressure for a young player, and the fact that I think you have to put into context as well his age and coming from the Championship. The last time he played in the Premier League for Swansea, he had a bit of a difficult time. That was probably a really good time for him to learn and develop. But also the difficult start he had this season. He missed hit the post in the first game against Man United, missed the penalty, having the character, and of course had to deal with a lot of racial abuse on social media. Yeah. But then the character, and I think it was a sort of a partnership for me with Tammy, of course, doing it on his own, being on the pitch and scoring goals, but also Lampard to give that faith. I mean, it was almost an identical situation with Lukaku and Mourinho, if you remember, a few years back, where after missing a penalty, Lukaku was sent out on loan and never played for Chelsea again. Whilst Lampard was like, no, I'm backing you. Tammy, you're my number 9 striker. I'm going to give you, you need to take the opportunity, but I'm going to give you the opportunity. And I think it's just been so impressive. The goals he scored, the hold-up play. I think you'll agree is like the one thing for me. It's not only about scoring goals. It's about when you're playing for a team as good as Chelsea and hoping to get as good as Chelsea, you need to do more than just hold up the ball. You need to link up play. You need to, make space for other players, sometimes create your own goals. And I think Tammy's variety in goals and even the goals he hasn't scored, I think have just been so impressive. And I think when you talked about his demeanour and not allowing to concede another goal from a set piece, I love how passionate he is on a football pitch. I know you probably pick up on this as well. Whenever he misses a chance, he's like bashing the turf. But that shows a good mentality of someone that wants to get better. And I agree. He's been injured. He's had injury problems, and he will come again. 15 goals this season. I predicted 15 goals for the whole season. I didn't predict 15 goals by February or January when he got injured. I completely agree with you, and I think he's a player that I think has been harshly treated by some sections. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, and that's down to the fact that he came from the Championship. I don't know. I think sometimes the fan base can be a bit unnecessarily critical, but maybe that's a systematic of Premier League fans. I think with the Premier League, as more money's been pumped in, as more advertisers have come into, really just try and gas the spectacle of the game. Maybe it's brought in like a consumerist mindset. I think that's one thing that I kind of see a lot. You think there'd be like a natural affinity for a guy that's come from your academy that's been here for years and years. Because again, why do you support a football club? It must be because of the emotional connection, no? Or is it purely because, okay, I support you because you just won the Champions League, so I guess you're my team now? I don't know. I don't know how that. Maybe that's the case. I'm not too sure, but I don't know. Tammy Abraham, that mentality, and that was the thing you mentioned. I remember the game where Gus Hiddink, all those years back, gave him his debut. I was at that game. That same mentality, that same hunger. I was thinking, this guy's 17 and he looks so confident. He looks hungry. He's looking for balls. He's putting that work in. And I just thought the mentality is always the number one thing you need to have if you do want to become a successful world-class player. And I think to have that already, as you said, the incidences where, the racial abuse, and to just come back strong from that and to move with the class. He's a very classy individual. He hasn't had any negativities throughout the season, nothing in his personal life coming out. And I think that's because we raise these young guys at our club to have that mentality, to move with class, move with grace. And this is why you don't see any negativity in the press about any Chelsea players doing anything other than maybe Mason Mount, but even then we all miss in football, so I'm not going to hold that against them too much.
Yeah, I think having Lampard and having Jody Morris and having Edwards all in that sort of camp at the moment, and sort of, as I read something about Mason Mount staying behind and doing extra drills with Frank Lampard and stuff like that, is I think that's the unique thing Lampard can bring that no other coach can, is sort of that knowing what it's like to, especially being at Chelsea and knowing the Chelsea sort of mentality and winning all the biggest things and passing that down. I don't like putting pressure on young players, whether that's Tammy. I think Tammy's had an amazing season. I think Mason has done extremely well through some difficult circumstances to play through the season. And I thought it was a shame that all round the Premier League got suspended, but I thought Mason was coming back into form before it got suspended. But I think just that mentality that Lampard can instill on these young players could hopefully set them up for wonderful futures. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah. 100%, man. I agree.
So moving on from this is sort of a big question, and it's probably a tough question, and maybe a simplistic question as well. But who do you think is Chelsea's most important player? That's the question I want to pose.
That's an interesting one. I'd probably go for Reece James at this point in time, purely because we've seen the struggles on that right-hand side for years now. And he's just single-handedly brought something to that right-hand side. and he's like one of our most creative players with his crossing, his ability to play out and beat the press, how he links up with the midfield as well. And what he's brought is that pace on the right hand side. I always thought before, where we used to have guys like Aspie or Zappa's, players that weren't too great in that position, our play was really like slow and stagnated. It was so predictable. You can just like picture Willian just holding the ball up far too long because there was no real options around him. But with Reece, Reece can tuck inside midfield, drawing a man away, leaving Willian to go 1v1 against a man. And I think that's been one of the reasons why Willian's football looks a lot better this season compared to like last and previous seasons. And for me, there's a reason why Lampard has been talking about Reece James so much before he eventually got in the team. And with how we play, this emphasis on expansive football, width, the fullbacks are really important. So I think I'd say right now Reece is important, because if he wasn't playing, I just don't think we'd be as good, breaking teams down and attacking.
Reece definitely feels like this has been his breakthrough season, but I think next year he's going to step it up probably another level. And the fullbacks, you spot on. Fullbacks are so important, and that creativity. You're looking for creativity from midfield. You're looking creativity from your wingers, the striker linking up play. But especially in modern football, fullbacks, we've seen it with Liverpool, like they're the obvious sort of example to give, but their midfielders, it's almost weird, it's like the creative midfielders are their fullbacks, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, they're the ones who get the most assists. And any way Chelsea can break down a Bournemouth next season at home, West Ham next season, Reece James with the deliveries he can give, it's just, and I agree, when he tucks inside, because he's got that experience playing in central midfield, that could potentially be something he does in the future. And that's why left back is so important, because if Chelsea can, I'm sure you get the same frustration watching Chelsea. It's like you watch the right side and you're like, if say HUDSON-ODOI is there, or even Willian on his best day is down there, and we've got pace, we've got vibrancy going down there, but then you look at the left and it's like, I love Marcus Alonso, right? And I think he's had some great moments, but like you just feel like it sort of, all the pace and energy just sort of gets sapped out a little bit when it goes on to that, especially if Dave has to cut back on into his right.
Yeah.
If Chelsea can get a good left back that can match Reece James, I think, it's a lot to say, but I think we'll be laughing. I really do. I think we'll become such a threatening team. I don't know if you
honestly
agree.
I am so excited for next season. We've signed Ziyech, who is like going to play that De Bruyne role in the team. Him on the right hand side, having the license to roam, with his creativity, he can move the ball, he can do anything with the ball, is going to be unbelievable. And I'm just thinking, once we get a proper left back, as you're saying, for your Hudsons and your Pulisics, how much better are they going to be? Having a fullback that's going to create more space for them to, beat their man and get at people. At times maybe I felt like whoever plays alongside Aspie or maybe Alonso down the left hand side can be a bit stifled, But I think if we do get that proper, left back with pace, quality on the ball, technique, great crossing, etc., then yeah, you're right, man. It's going to be unbelievable.
It will. At first, when you said Reece James, I was a little bit surprised, because, of course, he is still a younger player. He's so young. But I do agree, if you think about not only the impact he's going to have on Chelsea's game, but also the longevity probably of Reece James, if everything works out the way we hope it will. He will be Chelsea's right back for probably the next, hopefully, 7 to 8 years. So I do agree with you on that. I'd probably, if I'm going to go over left field shout that probably people won't expect, I'd say Ruben, because I think out of the young core, because I think you could still maybe put Ruben in that class, I think he's the most ready to go into, get into the prime of his career. I think if he returns anything like, I think people have forgotten how good he was under Sarri at the back end. He's probably my favorite player in the squad, so I'm being biased there.
He's my favorite player too.
But I think I think if he can come back and be anything like he was under Sarri at the back end of that season, I think he's going to do incredible things. And I as I say, I don't like to put too much pressure on players, but what I was seeing from him, at the anticipation, the physicality, the pace, like the fact under Sarri that midfield was transformed the moment Ruben came in.
Yeah,
I mean, just talk about Ruben for a little bit, because I think, same as me, the Ruben club.
Yeah, honestly, man, you're right. When Sarri, saw that, okay, Ruben can do the defensive side, and this is why I'm always going to be appreciative of Sarri, because he was the only manager that actually worked on that side of his game. worked on the defensive side, his positioning. And Sarri said, you're not getting in the team until it's perfect. So now Ruben for me isn't this guy who's like a liability off the ball anymore now. You know, guys like Mourinho and Conte, it seems incredible to me that they had no time to do that. But again, that comes down to the philosophy of each manager. Some managers don't care about that type of stuff. But yeah, Ruben, once he returns back to that team, it's going to be ridiculous. You know, what I love about him is just how unique he is. And I think that's what I always look for in players. You know, how do you play the game? Like, how do you express yourself? And, you know, for someone his height, the speed with his feet on the ball, the balance when he runs, his ability to just up the acceleration just like that. And now that he can use his strength as he's doing all of this as well, I really think that, you know, injuries permitted, this guy could be one of the most dominant mids in the next few years. His goals we saw, and it's like 10 goals under Sarri, barely playing in that sense, you know. And for me, what told me that, okay, Ruben's the real deal, is that the only player at the time that really was a standout that would look completely different to the rest of the players on the pitch was Eden Hazard. And when Ruben was playing alongside him, I thought that he was the only one I've seen for a while that was kind of on that same level and wavelength, had that same type of influence in the team, that every time he had the ball, you just knew that something good's going to happen. Not just you're hoping something's going to happen. You just know something good is going to happen because Ruben can do it all. So, yeah, when he returns back to that midfield, good Lord, it's going to be absolutely crazy.
Fingers crossed. And if anyone hasn't watched the video they put up on the Chelsea channel, sort of a short documentary about his recovery and how he's been doing, because of course it was supposed to be released when the season was still going on, and he hopefully would have returned very soon. But it's going to be an emotional, I'm sure, time when he does eventually get back on the pitch, and if he gets anything close, it's going to be incredible for sure. And just on the defensive side, just a small thing for me, I don't know if you remember the game last year at Old Trafford. He came off the bench, I believe, on that day, and it was like 1-1 late on, and Ruben won the ball back, and he was like, it was such an intelligent thing that you'd expect like a 27-year-old to do, and he just almost like shielded the ball, and then something like Eden does, just falls on it and wins a foul against Ashley Young. And it was like, just need to kill Man United. I think Man United had tried to just score and like they were getting a bit of momentum. And it was like, that to me is like game intelligence that you need. Like that, I was just like, yes, that's like, that for me is sometimes as good as a nice turn, you know, or a nice like run into the box. Cause I'm like, that shows you on a big occasion at a tense time, he's got that sort of calmness, that composure to do that. And I think that was an impressive trait for me. And if he can mold those two sides of the game, I think he's going to become one of Chelsea's best players. And I'm saying this, and he has the ridiculous thing, because it sort of demeans maybe a lot of the good players this year, you know, Mateo Kovacic, Christian Pulisic, Tammy Abraham, all the players you could bring up. But I just think, personally for me, when I'm thinking of a player that I think will become a star of Chelsea, I can't not say Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree, man. I think let's continue on with this praise a bit. Yeah. What's your favorite Ruben moment?
I think, man, I mean, I was there for I was literally right behind the goal for his first Chelsea goal against Scunthorpe. I was there, and I remember I was like, so it wasn't like I was just like, oh, there's this guy, he's coming into the team, and like, oh, now he's going to be a player. I was desperate to see him come in even before then, and I remember that day saying to my mate who I was watching, this is going to be Ruben's time. And I don't even think he started the game. I think he came off the bench. And then just seeing him run into the box, scoring that goal, I think that was a special moment. I think seeing him score that Brighton goal, the goal against Brighton, I thought was a big moment personally for him, because I think that was just a class moment, like a piece of world-class skill. Yeah. And also that goal he scored, unfortunately, even though it didn't end to him, the winner of the game, but I thought the goal against Frankfurt in the Europa League semi-final. Yeah. Ray made another great. I think it was with Eden. They worked quite well and he found a bit of space and then brilliantly curled it into the bottom corner. And you just thought, once again, you're stepping up at the right. This isn't like scoring the third or fourth goal in a game. You are scoring key goals in games. He scored the winner against Cardiff. You know, that was another moment. I don't know what your favorite moments. There's quite a few there. You know, but I'd probably say maybe his first, because it was a special moment. But he had to wait a long time to get his breakthrough.
Yeah, and I think that was best for the player's development in the long term, because he wasn't using a patronizing way. It was like, I know you're good enough, But if you want to play in this team, being good on the ball isn't good enough. You need to show that off the ball you can do something. But I think, yeah, for me, my favourite moment, and it kind of falls into that point you made about that game against United where he took the foul against Young, because it shows his composure at any time in the game. That skill against Man City in the League Cup final. To do that, because I was at that game too. It took me by, so I just didn't see it coming, and I love that. That's what you want to see from footballers. That's how you love the game.
Such a shame that flag went up, man.
Yeah,
and they didn't let Hazard go through, because if VAR was being used properly that day, I almost guarantee that would have been one of the greatest goals we've ever seen.
I know.
We would have won the game. Heading 1-on-1 with the keeper. Oh man,
because he would have scored it then.
Yeah,
just knew that would have happened. So that was annoying, because now that moment's been lost in time. But what I love is that not only did he pull off that outrageous piece of skill, but that weighted pass he played afterwards.
Yeah,
perfect weighted ball, and it's just like he can do that type of stuff. Good lords.
It's an overused cliche, but it's like Rolls Royce of a player. Some players you just watch the first time and you think, okay, you sit up, you're like, okay, he looks like this is a special player. And I think in similar ways, Reece James done that this season when he came into the first team. I thought you suddenly thought, because there was people around me who were like thinking, I was saying, Reece James, he done brilliant things at Wigan last year, and people were bigging him up. And it was like, hang on a minute, he needs to come into Chelsea, he needs to prove himself. It's a different level. And then as soon as he did that, I think everyone. They are similar in ways. Reece can use his physicality as well. He's good with his physicality, and he needs that. But it's that blend of physicality and pace, I think, that just makes Ruben just. He can be an absolutely incredible player. I just hope injuries don't limit him. I just hope that's the worst thing I can think. If he gets another injury, I'm going to start to worry.
Yeah. I think when it even comes to his injury history, it seems like maybe the back thing is something that's starting to get behind him, because a lot of that was growing pains. I think, he just kind of shot up all of a sudden when he was 16, I heard, and then that's where he's had issues ever since. But I think now he's good with that. That ACL, hopefully, I guess you become more susceptible to injuries like that once you get it the first time. But I just think, again, it's a systematic at this club, risking top class assets. And is it because maybe owners just think, well, we've got the money, we can just buy whoever? I don't know, but I'm just thinking, the way that he got that injury it wasn't a meaningless friendly, it was an important friendly, but to be so rigid, to want your best players playing before Europa League final too, I just don't really understand the common sense. I mean, I just sense that something was going to happen, because that pitch in that game was dry, the ball was bouncing, it looked terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And I'm just thinking, you're doing it to Ruben, manager's taking that risk with Kante as well. These are two of our most important players, It's just frustrating that that's how he got his injury, not in a game from a 50-50 or in training or something, but in a friendly like that. Crazy.
You almost think as well, it came to my mind, a sliding doors type moment, because his injury meant that Cover played the final, and Cover had probably his best game in a Chelsea shirt. I don't know how far down the line a transfer was, but you almost think, if Cover doesn't play, because Ruben would have played that final, he was a first team player by then. Sarri would have picked him. Could Cover's transfer may have fallen through? You never know these things. It could have, and we might not have had Kovacic. So I guess maybe it's one of those things, isn't it? It's still a terrible injury, and I think, of course, the cause behind the friendly is absolutely important, and the work Chelsea have done since then is brilliant. But it's just like common sense. It's a Europa League final. This is a big piece of silverware for Chelsea, and it's like I didn't understand the thinking behind it. It's like, can't you delay this till after the Europa League final? Delay it by a couple of weeks. It just it makes no sense to them. But that's you can't can't keep looking back.
Of this club, every time things are just fine, it's just like we like to just do stupid stuff for no reason. I don't know.
We're predictably unpredictable. That's what we are, man. That's the way. That's the thing about being a Chelsea fan.
I know.
So before we wrap up, I just want to ask you about sort of your sort of long-term sort of hopes for Chelsea in the next couple of years. What do you think about? You said you're excited. We've talked a lot about this in the video about next season and how excited you are. What do you think Lampard can do for Chelsea? How high do you think the ceiling is for Lampard?
I think it's very high because again, yeah, before we signed him, I was watching derby games because I wanted to get a sense of, how was Lampard tactically? And there were a few games that let me know straight away that, okay, Lampard isn't just like like a famous name, a sentimental name. He is a top class manager in his own right. Games like the one against United when he beat Mourinho, the one against us. Sorry, I thought that they deserved to beat us because they were the better team and they clearly knew how to. And the funny thing was that after that game, that's when teams started to close down Jorginho more and start to use mid-block tactics because at the time they weren't doing it. So we can really, he could have really jeopardized our season last season. And for me, the final game against Leeds in the playoffs, Leeds were like Derby's bogey team at the time. And we just found like an ingenious solution to limit what Leeds did. I know that their right back Ayling was really like important for how they play. He makes like a lot of runs in the field. And I think Lampard just had a man on him in that game. And it was interesting because in that playoff second leg game, Ayling lost the ball twice in midfield. And from those two occasions, Derby got goals from it. So this was just, for me, when I saw that, especially when you're playing against a team that have beaten you and you've been unlucky so many times, it told me that, Lampard, he knows what he's doing. Him and Jody, he knows what he's doing. And once he comes back to a club where he has better resources, better players, more youth players too, the football can be more complicated due to the level of the player. Because that was one thing at Derby that a lot of people didn't realise. Lampard adapts because he adapts. He adapted to the Derby team. He knew that on a technical level compared to let's say the academy guys and a Prem team wasn't the same. So he couldn't do too many complicated things. Like for example, their centre backs, Tomori was a big part of them playing up in the back. But Keogh, the guy playing beside him, wasn't really that great on the ball. So Lampard had to make a lot of smart adjustments. Like for example, their right back, what's the Derby right back, the light-skinned guy?
Bogle?
Bogle. Yeah, he was another one that got an opportunity because, that was a needs for the tactics of the team. So, Lampard, Jody showed me that, okay, these guys, they know what they're doing. And I knew that when they came here, it'd be an instant success. So, for next season, if I'm being really honest, if we won like a trophy or something, it would be maybe down to a bit of luck. Maybe, we had like an easy draw or maybe, things fell into place in that moment. Who knows? But I think for next season, it will be an improvement on the first one, but I don't think that's going to translate into trophies or anything just yet. Instead, we'll see the point gap close down. We'll see a better style of football, but there'll still be mistakes in the game because really it's been individual mistakes that have cost us in games throughout the season. So I think once we get to the third and fourth, and I'm using Liverpool as my blueprint here, once we get to the third and fourth season when these guys are playing more consistent game time, then, new signings from the second season have gelled in even more, then I think that's when we should start to expect something,
I think it's completely different, this regime, to any other, especially in the Roman era, of being more patient, looking at it from a longer term, understanding Lampard's hopefully going to build something that isn't just going to last for his tenure. Hopefully it's going to last longer than that. The style of play, the philosophy, bringing in young players. Hopefully Lampard can oversee a culture change at Chelsea. That's sort of my hope. I thought Sarri could do that, but I think Lampard could hopefully be the one to finally sort of nail that down.
Yeah, I agree. For Sarri, I felt sorry for him. And I think it's systematic of what we do. We tell these managers, introduce a new style. We really want you to come. And it was quite funny because that whole negotiation period when we tried to sign him from Napoli, we were the ones telling him to try and let his contract go down. We were the ones forcing him to this situation where, his boyhood club that he loves and he was so successful in, he kind of had to play our game to get the move. And, it's systematic. It was the same thing with Villas-Boas. That season at Porto, for me, is still one of the best seasons I've seen from a team. This was like football manager stuff they were doing. I mean, ridiculous amounts of goals, thrashing teams 4-5-0 every time. What did we do with both managers? We didn't fully invest in their image. We didn't get the players they wanted. And that's always going to make you struggle because, you know, how often do managers have to work with players that don't suit their style? And they have to form out these Frankenstein type of teams, these Frankenstein tactics to get the best out of something. And then eventually, you know, because the fans don't really understand fully what's happening, that pressure adds to these managers getting sacked. And I just think Sarri wasn't really fully backed. He was disrespected for me publicly when the Steve Holland reports came out so publicly. That is completely undermining the manager. And it just really told me that, you know, have the board really learned from their lessons? So, yeah, I was happy for him to get his first trophy winning for us. But, you know, I'm hoping that lessons will finally be learned under Lampard. I know at times the fan base can be very vocal, but I'm hoping the board are going to understand. And you know, now that we have guys like Petr Cech in charge and a lot more senior players at the club, that they're going to listen to these pros. You know, they're going to fully invest in them. And I hope that's what's the case because, you know, signing guys like Ziyech, you know, using all the young players as well. I'm sure that for someone like Marina, for example, that is like the perfect scenario because if he's not going to spend too much money because we have like a Billy Gilmore, for example, then that's going to benefit everyone. So I'm hoping that, you know, that type of philosophy now is going to continue and we're going to start to, you know, allow these seeds to like fully blossom.
Yeah, I think that I always think back fondly on Sarri. I think he was probably the right man at the wrong time. I think is probably the way I'd phrase it. I think, yeah, he was very harshly treated, but I think he will be looked at back on fondly when you look at the stats of what he actually did. But yeah, let's just hope lessons were learned and Frank can do something special at Chelsea. But thank you, mate, so much for coming onto the channel. Great discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Before we go off with all my guests, I'd like to give them the time, even though, as I said, viewers will probably know your channel, just a chance for you to shout out where people can find your work online. Obviously, links will be in the description box below, but just give you a chance to shout out now.
Yeah, so if you guys want to find me, it's BlueLionsTV on YouTube. I've just released like a massive video on N'Golo Kante. You know, there's a massive debate going on around, you know, is it time to sell him and reinvest that money into other areas? Does he suit Lampard's style? Are the injuries catching up to him? So I've basically broken everything down, clips, analysis. It's taken me a very long time. So hopefully you guys have the time, you know, hopefully, I mean, we're all self-isolating. What else are we doing? Hopefully, if you've got free time today, then you check the video out.
Yeah, definitely suggest you do that. And links, obviously, as I said before, will be in the description box below. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.